It's the 22nd of July, and tonight is the 7th night. We're talking on the Dīgha Nikāya. Tonight we come to Sutta number 11, Kevada Sutta. This is quite an important sutta. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying at Nalanda in Pavarika's mango grove, and the householder Kevaddha came to the Lord, prostrated himself before him and sat down to one side. Then he said, Lord, this Nalanda is rich, prosperous, populous, and full of people who have faith in the Lord. It would be well if the Lord were to cause some monk to perform superhuman feats and miracles. In this way, Nalanda would come to have even more faith in the Lord. The Lord replied, Kevaddha, this is not the way I teach Dhamma to the monks by saying, Go monks and perform superhuman feats and miracles for the white cloth lay people. For a second time, Kevaddha said, Lord, I would not be importunate, but I still say, this Nalanda is rich, prosperous, full of people who have faith in the Lord. It would be well if the Lord were to cause some monk to perform superhuman feats and miracles. In this way, Nalanda would come to have even more faith in the Lord. And the Lord replied as before. When Kevaddha repeated his request for a third time, the Lord said, Kevaddha, there are three kinds of miracles that I have declared, having realized them by my own insight. Which three? The miracle of psychic power, the miracle of telepathy, the miracle of instruction. What is the miracle of psychic power? Here, Kevaddha, among displays various psychic powers in different ways. Being one, he becomes many. Being many, he becomes one, etc., etc. And he travels in the body as far as the Brahma world. This description of the various psychic powers, as in Sutta number 2 previously. Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He tells this to someone else who is skeptical and unbelieving, saying, It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous, the great power and skill of that ascetic, etc. And that man might say, Sir, there is something called the Gandhara charm. It is by means of this that monk becomes many, etc. What do you think, Kevaddha? Would not a skeptic say that to a believer? He would, Lord. And that is why, Kevaddha, seeing the danger of such miracles, I dislike, reject and despise them. And what is the miracle of telepathy? Here a monk reads the minds of other beings, of other people, reads their mental states, their thoughts and ponderings, and says, That is how your mind is. That is how it inclines. That is in your heart. Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He tells this to someone else who is skeptical and unbelieving, saying, It is wonderful, sir, it is marvelous, the great power and skill of that ascetic, etc. And that man might say, Sir, there is something called the Manika charm. It is by means of this that monk can read the minds of others. And that is why, seeing the danger of such miracles, I despise them. Stop here for a moment. Here, the Buddha is saying, if his monks display psychic powers, those with faith in the Buddha and the disciples, they would be impressed by it. They would like it. But if the believing lay person were to tell some other person who does not have faith in the Buddha and the disciples, then he would say that they are using these different types of charm. I think the Pali word is vijja, and this actually refers to the mantras. In India, these mantras were handed down from the Brahmins, and mantras are words of power. There is no meaning in those words, but possibly it was handed down by the Devas to the Brahmins, because a long time ago the Brahmins, they were ascetics, and they practiced meditation until they could see and converse with Devas, and probably they learned these things. So these mantras can allow a person to do those things that a person with psychic power can do, like fly through the air, multiply the body, walk through the wall, dive into the earth like diving into water, walking on the surface of the water, etc. And similarly, with reading the minds of others. So the Buddha says, if the miracles were shown to people, those who are skeptical, they would not believe. And what is the miracle of instruction? Here, Kevaddha, a monk gives instruction as follows. Consider in this way, don't consider in that. Direct your mind this way, not that way. Give up that, gain this, and persevere in it. That Kevaddha is called the miracle of instruction. Again, Kevaddha, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super-knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma, which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth and practices the moralities, as in Sutta 2, verses 41 to 63. He guards the sense doors and attains the 4 jhanas, also found previously in Sutta 2. He attains various insights. He realizes the 4 noble truths, the path and cessation of the asavas, and he knows there is nothing further here. That Kevaddha is called the miracle of instruction. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says the miracle of instruction is to teach a person, and then if the person practices the holy life, practices the firstly by teaching that person, when the person hears the Dhamma, he has faith, and he goes forth. Having gone forth, then he practices the conduct of the holy life, or the practice of the holy life, which I said was charana. And from practicing charana, which culminates in the 4 jhanas, then he attains various knowledges, higher knowledges, and finally liberation. And this is called the miracle of instruction. And I, Kevaddha, have experienced these 3 miracles by my own super knowledge. Once, Kevaddha, in this order of monks, the thought occurred to a certain monk, I wonder where the 4 great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder. And the monk attained to such a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, there was at one time a certain monk was thinking about these 4 great elements. These 4 great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, describes the physical world. The physical world, in Pali, it's rupa. Rupa consists of these 4 elements. The earth element means the hardness element. The water is the liquid things that cohere together. The fire element is the heat element. The air is the motion element. So the physical world can be described by these 4 elements. And this monk wanted to know where the 4 great elements cease without remainder. In others, where does the world end? Because he thought this world is a world of suffering. It would be good if the world were to cease. So he attained a state of mental concentration that the way to the Deva realms appeared before him. So here you see this sentence is quite interesting. He meditated until his mind became so concentrated that the Deva realms appeared in front of him. So this confirms our Buddhist belief that the world actually exists in consciousness, in the mind. If you were to be able to develop your mind like this monk, then you are able to see and go and visit the various realms of existence, like the Buddha and the Arahant disciples. So you want to go to the Deva realm, it's not by chanting the Buddha's name. It's by meditating until the Deva realms appear before you. Then coming to the realm of the Devas of the four great kings, he asked those Devas, friends, where do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, wind, cease without remainder? At this question, the Devas of the four great kings said to him, monk, we don't know where the four great elements cease without remainder. But the four great kings are loftier and wiser than we are. They may know where the four great elements cease. So these Devas, they could not reply. They say, you go and see our kings, the four kings, they should be wiser, they will know. So that monk went to the four great kings and asked the same question. But they replied, we don't know, but the 33 gods may know. So they say the higher gods may know. So that monk went to the 33 gods who said, we don't know, but Sakka Devaraja may know. Then he went to ask Sakka Devaraja, and Sakka Devaraja also didn't know. He said the Yama Devas may know. Then this monk went to the Yama Devas, and they also didn't know. They say maybe our king, Suyama, son of the Deva, may know. Then when the monk asked Suyama, he also didn't know. He said the higher Tusita Devas may know. Then the monk went to the Tusita Devas and asked them, and they also didn't know. They said their king, Santusita, may know. And then when Santusita was asked, he also didn't know. So he said the fifth heaven, Nimanarati Devas may know. And when the monk asked them, they also didn't know. They said, go and ask our king, Sunimita. And when he asked Sunimita also couldn't answer. He said, the sixth heaven, the Devas called Paranimita Vasavati Devas may know. So the monk went to them and asked them. They also didn't know. They said their king, Vasavati, may know. And then when the monk asked Vasavati Devaraja, he also couldn't answer. He said, maybe the Devas of Brahma's retinue may know. Then that monk, by the appropriate concentration, made the way to the Brahma world appear before him. He went to the Devas of Brahma's retinue and asked them. They said, we don't know, but there is Brahma, great Brahma, the conqueror, the unconquered, the all-seeing, all-powerful, the Lord, maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, father of all that have been and shall be. He is loftier and wiser than we are. He would know where the four great elements cease without remainder. And where, friends, is this great Brahma now? And they said, monk, we do not know when, how and where Brahma will appear, but when the signs are seen, when a light appears and a radiance shines forth, then Brahma will appear. Such signs are an indication that he will appear. Then it was not before long the great Brahma appeared, and that monk went up to him and said, friend, where do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, air or wind, cease without remainder? Stop here for a moment. So you notice here, in this sutta, it talks as far as the first jhana realm, the Brahma's heaven. Here the sutta talks about Brahma's retinue and Mahabrahma, the great Brahma. But in later books, they added ministers of Brahma. So it is by adding a few things like this, they created the 31 planes of existence. These 31 planes of existence is very well known. But actually, a lot of people don't know. It comes from later books. The Buddha never talked about 31 planes of existence. The Buddha only talked about 5 realms of existence. The heavens, which are the highest, then the human realm, and then below that, the 3 woeful planes. As far as the heavens are concerned, he did mention a few heavens. So like in this Brahma realm, he only talked about 2, Brahma's retinue and the great Brahma. But later books they added. So the great Brahma replied, monk, I am Brahma, Mahabrahma, the conqueror, unconquered, all-seeing, all-powerful, Lord, maker and creator, ruler, appointer and orderer, father of all that have been and shall be. The second time the monk said, friend, I did not ask if you are Brahma, great Brahma, the conqueror, etc. I asked you where the four great elements cease without remainder. And the second time the great Brahma replied as before, I am Brahma, Maha Brahma, conqueror, unconquered, all-seeing, all-powerful, etc. And the third time the monk said, friend, I did not ask you that. I asked where the four great elements, earth, water, fire, air, cease without remainder. Then Kevaddha, Maha Brahma, the great Brahma, took that monk by the arm, led him aside and said, monk, these devas believe there is nothing Brahma does not see, there is nothing he does not know, there is nothing he is unaware of. That is why I did not speak in front of them. But monk, I don't know where the four great elements cease without remainder. And therefore, monk, you have acted wrongly, you have acted incorrectly by going beyond the Blessed Lord and going in search of an answer to this question elsewhere. Now, monk, you just go to the Blessed Lord and put this question to him, and whatever answer he gives, accept it. Then, so that monk, as swiftly as a strong man might flex or unflex his arm, vanished from the Brahma world and appeared in my presence. He prostrated himself before me, then sat down to one side and said, Lord, where do the four great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder? Stop here for a moment. So you see, this monk, he has the greatest teacher in the world in front of him, and he doesn't realize. He goes looking for an answer elsewhere. This very often happens with disciples. They don't have enough faith in the teacher. And there's a saying, familiarity breeds contempt, is it? So when the teacher is too familiar with the disciple, and then the disciple does not respect. So here the greatest teacher, he has the greatest teacher in the world, but he goes to the heavens and asks all the devas, and not a single deva could answer him. And Mahabrahma asked him to go back to the Buddha. So he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said, I replied, monk, once upon a time, seafaring merchants, when they set sail on the ocean, took in their ship a land-sighting bird. When they could not see the land themselves, they released this bird. The bird flew to the east, to the south, to the west, to the north. It flew to the zenith and to the intermediate points of the compass. If it saw land anywhere, it flew there. But if it saw no land, it returned to the ship. In the same way, monk, you have been as far as the Brahma world, searching for an answer to your question, and not finding it, and now you come back to me. But monk, you should not ask your question in this way. Where do the four great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, air element, cease without remainder? Instead, this is how the question should have been put. Where do earth, water, fire and air no footing find? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form, or namarupa, wholly destroyed? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha said, the way you ask, first the Buddha said, you go everywhere looking for an answer to your question, and you cannot find, now you come back to me, just like the bird in the ship. Then the Buddha said, you asked the question wrongly. The question the monk put, where do the four great elements cease without remainder? So the Buddha said, if you ask where the four elements cease without remainder, that means you think there is a place where you can get out of the world. But that is not the way to ask. Instead, the Buddha said, you should ask, where does earth, water and fire no footing find? That means have no opportunity to arise. Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Namarupa, wholly destroyed. Because in this world, there's always this duality. If you have long, you have short. You have black, you have white. Small, great, fair, foul. So Also, in this world is made up of nama rupa. Nama rupa is the counterpart of vijnana. Vijnana is consciousness, and nama rupa is the object of consciousness. Whenever you have consciousness, you must have an object. As far as the world is concerned, you must have an object. So that object is nama rupa, and nama rupa means mentality and materiality. Materiality means the physical world that you are conscious of, and mentality is the mental part. Mental part, feelings, your own feelings, other people's feelings, your thoughts, other people's thoughts, etc. And the Buddha said, the answer is, where consciousness is signless, anidasanang, boundless, anantang, all luminous, sabato pahang. That's where earth, water, fire and air find no footing, or no footing find. There both long and short, small and great, fair and foul. There namarupa are wholly destroyed. With the cessation of consciousness, this is all destroyed. Thus the Lord spoke, and the householder Kevaddha, delighted, rejoiced at his words. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part now is extremely important, because there are some people say that when you enter Nibbana, because this where earth, water, fire and air have no chance to arise, no footing, it means the state of Nibbana. In the state of Nibbana there is no world, because the world is a world of suffering. When you have the world, then you have long and short, small and great, fair and foul, etc. So this state of Nibbana, the Buddha says, consciousness is signless. Signless means no object, boundless, all luminous, extremely bright, everywhere bright. There, earth, water and air, the physical world cannot arise, and all the discrimination, long and short, fair and grey, black and white, everything is not there, and namarupa also not there, and cessation, there is cessation of consciousness, so all this is destroyed. So the last part talking about the cessation of consciousness is a different consciousness from the earlier one. This cessation of consciousness refers to the cessation of the sixth consciousness, because I have mentioned before that the sixth consciousness creates the world. Seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling, taste, touch, consciousness creates the outer world, and thinking creates the inner world. So the sixth consciousness creates the world of namarupa, the world of discrimination, long and short, small and great, fair and foul, black and white, etc., good and bad, etc. So that is the sixth consciousness. But in this state of Nibbana or Parinibbana, consciousness is signless. There is no object, boundless and luminous. So this state of Parinibbana is a different type of consciousness. So a lot of people they don't notice this sutta. So they say when you enter Nibbana, there's nothing, and no consciousness whatsoever. But here you can see there is a type of consciousness which is has no object. So when it has no object, there is no self, there is no other. When there is an object, for example, when seeing consciousness arises, and you think you see, then you have an eye seeing something, seeing an object, right? There's always this subject and object, as far as the sixth consciousness is concerned. But in this Nibbana state, or final Nibbana or Parinibbana, there is no object. So because there is no object, there is no subject. So there is no self. But even though there is no self, there is consciousness. So basically the whole world is consciousness. Just that looks like this consciousness can be divided in active consciousness and static consciousness. Just like kinetic energy and static energy. Right? So the static state is like the consciousness that is not active. But when it's active, then a being comes, a being rises. Okay, now we come to Sutta number 12, Lohicca Sutta, about good and bad teachers. Thus have I heard, once the Lord was touring Kosala with a large company of some 500 monks, and coming to Salavattika, he stayed there. And at that time the Brahmin Lohicca was living at Salavattika, a populous place full of grass, timber, water and corn, which had been given to him by King Pasenadi of Kosala as a royal gift and with royal powers. Just then this evil line of reasoning occurred to Lohicca. Suppose an ascetic or Brahmin were to discover some good doctrine. Having done so, he ought not to declare it to anyone else. For what can one man do for another? This is just as if a man, having cut through an old fetter, were to make a new one. I declare such a thing is an evil deed rooted in attachment. For what can one man do for another? Then Lohicca heard it said that the ascetic Gotama had arrived at Salavattika, and that concerning the blessed Lord Gotama, a good report has been spread about, etc., etc. And indeed it is good to see such arahants. And Lohicca said to Besika the barber, Friend Besika, go to the ascetic Gotama, ask in my name after his health, and then say, May the Reverend Gotama consent to take tomorrow's meal with his Sangha of monks from the Brahmin Lohicca. Very good, sir, said Besika, and carried out the errand. The Lord signified his acceptance by silence. Then Besika, understanding the Lord's acceptance, rose from his seat and passed by with his right side to the Lord. He returned to Lohicca and told him of the Lord's acceptance. Stop here for a moment. So here this Lohicca, he has this wrong view that if some ascetic or Brahmin were to discover some good Dhamma, he should not teach it. For what can one man do for another? That is his thinking. Then after that, he heard that the Buddha had come to his place and he invited the Buddha for a meal. And the Buddha accepted by silence. That's the Buddha's way of accepting. Then the Besika, the barber, having conveyed the message, he kept his right side to the Lord and departed. This is an Indian tradition, keeping your right side to somebody shows respect. Even in our country, if you want to give something to somebody, you give it with your right hand. To give it with your left hand is impolite. Also in Thailand. And Lohicca, as the night was ending, had choice, hard and soft foods prepared at his own home. Then he sent Besika to tell the Lord that the meal was ready. And the Lord, having risen early and taken his robe and bowl, went with his order of monks to Salavattika. And Besika the barber followed the Lord close at hand. And he said, Lord, this evil thought has occurred to the Brahmin Lohicca. And he described that wrong view of Lohicca. Truly, Lord, this is what the Brahmin Lohicca has been thinking. And the Buddha said, It may well be so, Besika. It may well be so. So the Lord came to Lohicca's dwelling and sat down on the prepared seat. Lohicca personally served the Buddha and his Sangha of monks with choice, hard and soft food till they were contented and satisfied. Then, when the Lord had taken his hand from the bowl, Lohicca took a low stool and sat down to one side. Then the Lord said to him, Lohicca, is it true that an evil line of reasoning has occurred to you? Namely, suppose an ascetic or Brahmin were to discover some good doctrine. Having done so, he ought not to declare it to anyone else. For what can one man do for another? It is just as if a man, having cut through an old fetter, were to make a new one. I declare that such a thing is an evil deed rooted in attachment. For what can one man do for another? And Lohicca said, Yes, Reverend Gotama. What do you think, Lohicca? Don't you reside at Salavattika? Yes, Reverend Gautama. Well now, if anyone should say, the Brahmin Lohicca resides at Salavattika, and he should enjoy the entire fruits and revenues of Salavattika, not giving anything away to others. Would not anyone who spoke like that be a source of danger to your tenants? And Lohicca said, he would be a source of danger, Reverend Gautama. And as such, would he be solicitous for their welfare or not? He would not, Reverend Gautama. And not being solicitous for their welfare, would he have a heart full of love for them or of hatred? Of hatred, Reverend Gautama. And in a heart full of hatred, is there wrong view or right view? Wrong view, Reverend Gautama. But Lohicca, I declare that wrong view leads to one of two destinies, hell or an animal rebirth. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is trying to show that Lohicca has wrong view. So he says, now, if following your line of thought, that whatever you obtain, you should not share with others, then you should not share your revenue to anyone else, and even to those of your tenants. Then that being so, would it not be dangerous for your tenants? He said yes, so he had to admit. And then finally the Buddha shows him that this is wrong view. And the Buddha said that wrong view leads to one of two destinies, either rebirth in hell or the animal realm. What do you think, Lohicca? Does King Pasenadi of Kosala reside at Kasi Kosala? He does, Reverend Gautama. Well, if anyone should say, King Pasenadi of Kosala resides at Kasi Kosala, and he should enjoy the entire fruits and revenues of Kosala, not giving anything away to others, would anyone who spoke like that be a source of danger to his tenants? Would he have a heart full of hatred? And would that not be wrong view? It would, Reverend Gautama. Then surely, if anyone were to say the same of the Brahmin Lohicca, that would be wrong view. In the same way, Lohicca, if anyone should say, suppose an ascetic or Brahmin, stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, if using your view, then that means if an ascetic knows something he should not share with others, then King Pasenadi should not share his revenue and his land and wealth with anyone else, including even you. Then he realized it's true. In the same way, Lohicca, if anyone should say, suppose an ascetic or Brahmin were to discover some good doctrine and thought he ought not to declare it to anyone else, for what can one man do for another? He would be a source of danger to those young men of good family who, following the Dhamma Vinaya taught by the Tathagata, attain to such excellent distinction as to realize the fruit of stream entry, of one's returning, of non-returning, of arahantship, and to all who ripen the seeds of a rebirth in the Deva world. Being a source of danger to them, he is uncompassionate and his heart is grounded in hostility, and that constitutes wrong view, which leads to hell or the animal rebirth. And if anyone were to speak thus of King Pasenadi, he would be a source of danger to the king's tenants, yourself and others, etc. Okay. Lohicca, these three kinds of teachers in the world are blameworthy. And if anyone blames such teachers, his blame is proper, true, in accordance with reality and faultless. Which three? Here, Lohicca is a teacher who has gone forth from the household life into homelessness, but who has not gained the goal of asceticism. And without having gained this goal, he teaches his disciples a doctrine, saying, this is for your good, this is for your happiness. But his pupils don't wish to hear, they don't listen, they don't arouse the thought of enlightenment, and the teacher's instructions are flouted. He should be blamed, saying, this venerable one has gone forth, etc., etc., and his instructions are flouted. It is just as if a man were to persist in making advances to a woman who rejected him, and to embrace her though she turned away. This I declare to be an evil doctrine based on attachment. For what can one man do for another? This is the first teacher who is blameworthy. Stop here for a moment. So just now, Lohicca basically was saying, if some ascetic or Brahmin knows something, he should not teach to others. So Buddha at first showed him that not sharing anything with others is wrong. But now the Buddha is trying to also show that there are certain teachers who should not try to teach others, who should not try to share what they know with others because of certain reasons. The first one is he has not gained the goal of asceticism. He has not gained the fruits of the holy life. And he has not attained the fruits of the holy life. Then he teaches others. People will not listen to him. People have no respect for him. So this one is, first one is an unqualified teacher. For example, also there are some people, they are very good at preaching, but they don't practice what they preach. So what is he is talking about the goal of asceticism. What is the goal of asceticism? I think the goal of asceticism are those things said by the Buddha to be Uttari Manusa Dhamma. Uttari Manusa Dhamma. Manusa is human beings. Uttari is higher than human being. Dhamma is states higher than the ordinary human being. In other words, supernormal states. And what are these supernormal states? In the Vinaya, one is jhana. Jhana. The four jhanas, any one of the four jhanas also is Uttari Manusa Dhamma. And then psychic powers that come with the attainment of the four jhanas. And then including liberation. And then the paths and fruits of Aryahood. The first path, the first fruit, second path, second fruit, third path, third fruit, fourth path, fourth fruit. And only the fourth fruit is a liberated person. The others are partially liberated. So these are the goals of asceticism, goals of the holy life. The aim of the holy life is to achieve these states called Uttari Manusa Dhamma, supernormal or higher than normal human attainments. So this person, he has not attained anything, probably just become a monk. There are some people like that, they just become a monk and they quickly want to teach, but they are not qualified to teach. So because they are not qualified to teach, people don't listen to him. Again, there is a teacher who has gone forth, but who has not gained the goal of asceticism. Without having gained this goal, he teaches his disciples a doctrine saying, this is for your good, this is for your happiness. His pupils wish to hear, they listen, they arouse the thought of enlightenment, and the teacher's instructions are not flouted. He should be blamed, saying, this venerable one has gone forth, etc., etc., but has not gained the goal of asceticism, and without gaining the goal, he teaches his disciples. It is as if, leaving his own field, he should think that another's field is in need of weeding. I declare this to be an evil doctrine rooted in attachment. This is the second teacher who is blameworthy. I'll stop here for a moment. So here again, this second monk has not attained any of the fruits of the holy life, and he teaches, but people listen to him, people listen to him and heed his instructions, but then the Buddha says this teacher is blameworthy, because if the teacher has not cultivated himself, initially his followers may have a lot of faith in him, but later he will, because he has not cultivated himself, it's likely that he will do something wrong, break the precepts, or even break the major precepts, and then people lose faith in him, or he disrobes or something. So, in the suttas, the Buddha says that it is good for a monk to teach, or to learn the Dhamma, but the Buddha says that it is important for a monk to allot a certain time to go into seclusion and practice meditation. So, if a monk only teaches but does not practice himself, it's just like the Buddha says here. This farmer, instead of looking after his own field, he goes to tend to another person's field. Again, there is a teacher who has gone forth and who has gained the goal of asceticism. Having gone forth, he teaches, but his pupils don't wish to hear him. His instructions are flouted. He too should be blamed. Just as if, having cut through an old fetter, one were to make a new one. I declare that this is an evil doctrine rooted in attachment. For what can one man do for another? This is the third teacher who is blameworthy. These are the three kinds of teacher that I spoke of as blameworthy. So this third teacher, he has gained a certain goal of asceticism, and he starts teaching, but maybe he has not prepared himself well enough, so people don't listen to him, so the Buddha says, but if he still insists on teaching, wants to teach, even though people don't welcome his teaching, then he's blameworthy. As far as the Dhamma is concerned, normally a monk should preach the Dhamma or teach the Dhamma when requested. If not requested, he should be careful, because sometimes people might not appreciate. If sometimes even not invited, a monk gives advice, if it's appreciated, then it's okay, but not if it's not appreciated. So also we must realize, the Buddha says, very few people are interested in the true Dhamma, because the true Dhamma involves cultivating yourself, making effort, letting go of your faults, your bad habits and all that, which a lot of people are not willing to let go. A lot of people still want to enjoy the world and all these things. So a lot of people are not interested in the true Dhamma. That's why Buddhas, 99.99% of Buddhas are Pacheka Buddhas. The Buddha looked into the past 91 world cycles and he saw only 6 Sammasambuddhas willing to teach the Dhamma to the world. Whereas the Buddha said at one time, outside Rajagaha, Wangsa-cheng, there is a mountain called Isigili mountain, and the Buddha said at one time there were 500 Pacheka Buddhas there. So you see, one time only you can find 500 Pacheka Buddhas. But 91 world cycles, you can only find 6 Sammasambuddhas. So 99.99% of Buddhas are Pacheka Buddhas. A lot of people don't realize this. And they make vows to become Buddha and all that, want to teach the world. But actually when they become a Buddha, they don't want to teach. Then Lohicca said, Reverend Gautama, are there any teachers in the world who are not blameworthy? And the Buddha said, Here Lohicca, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened and blessed. He, having realized it by his own super-knowledge, proclaims this world with its devas, maras and brahmas, its princes and people. He preaches the Dhamma which is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter, and displays the fully perfected and purified holy life. A disciple goes forth and practices the moralities, guards the sense doors, etc., attains the first jhana. And whenever the pupil of a teacher attains to such an excellent distinction, that is a teacher who is not to be blamed in the world. And if anyone blames that teacher, his blame is improper, untrue, not in accordance with reality and faulty. Similarly, he attains the other three jhanas and various insights, abhinya. And whenever the pupil of a teacher attains to such excellent distinction, that is a teacher who is not to be blamed in the world. He realizes the Four Noble Truths, the past, the cessation of the corruptions, the asavas, etc. Whenever the pupil of a teacher attains to such excellent distinction, that is a teacher who is not to be blamed in the world. And if anyone blames that teacher, his blame is improper, untrue, not in accordance with reality and faulty. At this, the Brahmin Lohicca said to the Lord, Reverend Gautama, it is as if a man were to see someone by the hair who had stumbled and was falling into a pit, and to set him on firm ground. Just so, I, who was falling into the pit, have been saved by the Reverend Gautama. Excellent, Reverend Gautama, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who had got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place so that those with eyes could see what was there. Just so, the Reverend Gautama expounded the Dhamma in various ways. I go for refuge to the Lord Gautama, the Dhamma and the Sangha. May the Reverend Gautama accept me as a lay follower who has taken refuge from this day forth for as long as life shall last. That's the end of the sutta. So here, the Buddha says that if a teacher teaches and the disciple can attain these Uttari Manusa Dhamma, these states which are higher than the normal human being, namely the jhanas, the abhinyas or higher knowledges and liberation, then the teacher is not to be blamed. So, going back to the three teachers who are blameworthy, the first one has not attained any of this goal of the holy life. The second one also has not attained. The third one has attained, but people don't want to listen to him for various reasons. For example, maybe he has attained jhana, but there are some people who have a knack for teaching. Some people have no knack for teaching. Some people, the way they speak, people don't like. The Buddha says in the suttas that a teacher should be able to speak very clearly so that people can understand. He should speak slowly. Not everybody is able to do that. So this teacher, this third one who is blameworthy, just attained something, but he doesn't have the ability to teach. And so people don't want to listen to him. So that's why he's blameworthy. But if he can teach his disciple to attain, any teacher can teach the disciple to attain the jhanas or the abhinyas, various types of psychic power, and attain the paths and the fruits, then he is not blameworthy. So this is a very important point, because nowadays in the world there are many who disparage jhana. Even so-called meditation teachers nowadays, they put down jhana. I know a certain famous meditation teacher in his book. He said, "What's the point of cultivating jhana?" He said, "When you attain jhana, you don't have mindfulness. Only when you come out of jhana, you have mindfulness." That shows he doesn't understand what is jhana, and also shows he has not attained jhana. And yet he's a famous meditation teacher in the world. So a lot of people, because they don't listen to the Buddha's suttas, study the Buddha's words, then they don't know that a lot of teachers that they follow are teaching contradictory to what the Buddha says. That's why I always stress that it's very important to be familiar with the suttas. The Buddha said very clearly that if any monk says the Buddha taught in such and such a way, the Buddha said not to accept and not to reject it, but to compare it with the suttas. Only if it follows the suttas can you accept it to be the Buddha's teachings. So the goal of the holy life, of the spiritual path, is basically the jhanas, the four jhanas, and the various knowledges, and the paths and fruits of Aryahood. The paths and fruits of Aryahood are the most important, more important than the jhanas and the psychic powers. Because once you attain the paths and fruits, you are an Arya. And once you're an Arya, you cannot go backwards. You cannot regress. You cannot fall. You cannot even be reborn into the woeful planes of existence. And you are sure of liberation. And they're not at the most 7 lifetimes you will attain liberation. So here finally Lohicca said, it's as if a man were to see someone by the hair who had stumbled and was falling into a pit, and to set him on firm ground. Just so I, who was falling into the pit, have been saved by the Reverend Gotama. So here, because the Buddha said, a person with wrong view will only have 2 types of rebirth, either hell or the animal realm. Then he realized he has been saved from the hell and the animal realm by the Buddha. So he showed his appreciation. So, okay, I think we got to 2 suttas for tonight, and that's enough. Probably you have a lot of questions tonight. So these 2 suttas are quite important. The Kevada Sutta describes the state of cessation where consciousness ceases, which is basically the state of parinibbana after the Arahant has passed on. And then the Lohicca Sutta talking about teachers who are blameworthy and teachers who are not blameworthy. Any question? Yeah.
Buddha said that there can only be one Buddha at the time. So does that mean in the world cycle or at the present moment?
At the present moment, the Buddha says at any one time there can only be one Sammasambuddha at the present moment. So like in this world cycle, on this present earth, the Buddha said there will be 5 Sammasambuddha. The first one was Kakusanda, then Konagamana, and then Kassapa, and then now the Buddha Gotama, and the future will be Metteyya Buddha or Maitreya Buddha.
So only one Sammasambuddha, and what about Buddha? Could there be 10 at one time?
Say again?
Only one Buddha at a time.
No, one Sammasambuddha.
Sammasambuddha at a time. What about Buddha? Could there be 10 at a time?
Oh, can be 500. The Buddha said, can be hundreds of them.
Has always been used as a reference step by step from the Arya Sila up to the fourth chapter. So we assume that is the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is to do to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the Sila, the Charana, and the Dīgha path. Then coming to the fourth chapter, that is how the person after purity of mind. Let's say if an external ascetic, if they do not practice the Arya Sila and the Charana, can they attain fourth chapter with the Parasuddhi?
They can, external ascetics, without practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, they can attain the 4th jhana. But the difference is that the jhana they attain is the un-Aryan jhana. The Buddha said the Aryan Samadhi or Aryan jhana is jhana supported by the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. So there's a difference between Aryan Samadhi and un-Aryan Samadhi. So un-Aryan Samadhi, because it is not supported by the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, it does not lead to liberation. Whereas the Aryan Samadhi, which is the 4 jhanas, supported by the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, leads to liberation.
Let's say, unless the particular or very poor, they cannot do Dhamma. Otherwise, wouldn't they do the same what is to the same to what can one man do for another?
What the Buddha is trying to say is what can one man do for another is that if you are not qualified, how can you help another? The Buddha said, if a person is in the mud, how can he help another person out of the mud? He has to get out of the mud before he can help a person out of the mud. So the Buddha basically is saying that if a person is not qualified, what can he do for another? Who is speaking? Are you talking about Lohicca or are you talking about the Buddha?
Lohicca's words here is that having one of the powers of good or faith, like Buddha, that is called having a faith. So continuously, doesn't teach unless it grows. If it is young, it doesn't teach practically.
No, this is wrong view. This is Lohicca's wrong view, that if a person has discovered good doctrine, he should not teach. This is not the Buddha's words, this is Lohicca's words. They are very different from the Buddha's words. The Buddha is using his words, just using his words basically to say that there is a case what can one man do for another if he is not qualified? So suppose you are not qualified in medicine, and then you try to heal another person. You are not qualified to heal him. So the Buddha is saying Lohicca has a wrong view. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, the giving of Dhamma is the highest gift. But here Lohicca is saying, if you have the Dhamma, you should not teach others.
You mean Bhante? Just referring to this one on the Sutta number, I think it's 11, what Brahma didn't know. Now, when the monk said, very good at 4 great elements, the earth element, water element, fire element, and the earth element cease without knowing. Is he asking about when the world is coming to an end? Because if I remember last year, in one of the suttas, I think you were mentioning something about when the world system as we know it will come to an end when it's at the moment you have 1 sun, then second you have 2 and 3. By the time we come to 7, the system, the earth as we know it, will explode. Is he referring to the same thing?
No. He's referring to where the world has no opportunity to arise. But this one, when you say end of the world, this world system ends. There are many other world systems. But here he's saying that totally there's no samsara, no universe at all. As I mentioned before, the world exists in consciousness. Right? So, to end the world, you must end the consciousness.
When you refer to the Kevada and Precepts, earth, water, fire, and faith was recognized. When the earth, water, fire, and air no cooking fine, is this referring to Dhammavuddho? Because the cooking we get is the consciousness.
Yeah, there it says where are nama rupa wholly destroyed.
So the four great elements also established.
When the world cycles end, is there just like one nirvana, or is there for each world cycle? Is there?
No, when we say the world ends, we are talking about a one world system. The Buddha says one world system consists of a sun. So every star that you see in the sky, every star is a world system. And every star will have human beings, around the star. Just like our star is the sun. So there are planets around the sun. And there will be human beings. So there will be other world systems that have human beings, that have devas, similar devas and devis. So when that world ends, only that world ends. Others will still be around. That is not Nibbana.
The question is, as the Buddha suggested any physical fitness exercises for one to do
in India, there are two schools of thought. One is if you want to practice a spiritual path, you have to develop your body first, and they do yoga exercises. So yoga, asanas and all these things to strengthen the body, and they can control the breathing, they can even control the heartbeat and all these things. And the other line of thought is like the Buddha. The Buddha does not talk about the necessity to develop your body. He goes straight into the spiritual practice. But the Buddha says that walking meditation is good. And also, if you look into the life of the Buddha and the monks, you find that they go on alms round, beg for their food. So that is very healthy because they walk barefooted, and you'll be stepping on pebbles and sand and all that. That's reflexology. And then not only that, the monks have to do work in the monastery. If you look into the Vinaya books, you find that at one time, during the 3 months of the Vasa, Venerable Mahamoggallana with a team of monks, they were building kutis. They are building many kutis. So a lot of people, they think monks should only meditate and not work. No, because if everybody meditates, then who's going to maintain the monastery? There are some monks, of course, they don't want to work. They only want to meditate. That's good. Then they have to live alone. Live alone in a cave or something. Then the cave can be very dirty. Last time I stayed in a cave, there's a lot of bats. In dark caves there's a lot of bats. And there'll be a lot of bad shit all around. So you just have to don't bother about the bad shit and the snakes and all that. Just meditate only. No, because I don't stay in an enclosed cave with all the smell. You got to stay in a well-ventilated cave.
Is there a reason why I notice a lot of forest monasteries, the kutis are located on the hill? Is there a reason for that?
Located on a hill. A hill is a good place to have a monastery. Firstly, because it's not flooded, and secondly, because if there's a little hill, then it's more windy. Low ground is always the air is stagnant. There's some monasteries on low ground, but it's very stagnant, and also because if you want to go away from the town, then you go to the countryside. It's liable to have hills.
What is the 9th and 10th precept? Is there a difference between them?
9th and 10th precept for a samanera. The 9th precept is Mala, Ganda, Vilepana, Dharana, Mandana, Vibhusana, Thana. That one is not seeing shows. Wait, let me see. The first one is not seeing shows. The 8th one is Nacha, Gita, Vadita, Visuka, Dasana, Mala, Ganda, Vilepana, Dharana, Mandana, Vibhusana, Thana. The 8th one is not to see shows, listen to music, sing and dance and all this. The 9th one is not to adorn yourself, use perfume, makeup and all these things. And the 10th one is not to possess money.
I thought the 7th one is not to see shows.
There's a difference between the 8 precepts and the 10 precepts. In the 8 precepts, the 7th precept consists of 2 precepts. Not to see shows, not to sing and dance and all these things. And also the other precept, not to adorn your body, use cosmetic and perfume and all these things. Two precepts are found in the 7th precept of the 8 precepts. But these 2 precepts in the 10 precepts, they are broken up into the the 7th precept and the 8th precept, and then the 9th precept is the Ucha Sayana, Maha Sayana, not to sleep on luxurious bed, and then the 10th precept is not to possess money,
Okay. What about this precept? How about the very singing? Let's say Buddhist Sunday schools, they encourage hymn singing and all this.
But they are not taking the 8 precepts,
But they are not those that they do the show.
Mm-hmm.
To attend all this like meditation.
Mm-hmm. The monks are singing, meh?
Even but they attend the function.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and of course they are true to them. So who is taking the precept?
In that case, sometimes it's for the purpose of supporting the Sunday school. They do it, it's different.
I think that probably one answer.
No. That's why there is, when a person attains Sotapanna, 3 factors are abandoned. Okay? One is Sakkaya Ditthi, which is identity view. Identity view means identifying the body and the mind with the self. Okay? And then another one is doubt. Doubt about the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. The third one is Sila Bhatta Paramasa, attachment to rules and rituals. Actually, attachment to Sila and rituals. So, if a person is attached to rules, even Sila, and you don't understand there is a purpose for Sila, then you cannot be a Sotapanna. You must understand what is the purpose of the Sila. Don't be Seipan. So, we must understand, so don't be too rigid. There are some monks, small things, they're too fussy. Even water has got to be offered. But in the Vinaya books, water and toothpick don't have to be offered. Okay, shall we end here?